when we intervene with birth through synthetic hormones, it can create what's called a hormonal gap. And what can happen is if they give you an overdose of the synthetic oxytocin, it can create hyperstimulation of the uterus, which then leads to emergency cesarean. I like to provide my clients with a sample of a map, and throughout the course, I go through every single journey. So the main 3 journeys are natural, physiological birth, induction of labour, and then you've got cesarean birth.
People could look at it and be like, well, why would I go all natural when I could just get painkillers, not feel a thing, get in there, get it done? Why is this, the whole natural sort of way, such a big thing that people are wanting?
Actually, I'm going to get out my prop here. So this is actually a representation of a...
When Simona and I fell pregnant, we had no idea about all the risks that were involved. We have no idea about the different types of births that you could have. And what we've learned for you is that... Shari, so when Simona and I fell pregnant, 10 months ago now-ish, we had no idea about the road that we're about to walk down. We had no idea about all the risks that were involved. We have no idea about the different types of births that you could have. We had no idea what was going to happen when the medical system got involved, people's different opinions and blah, 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 blah. We had no idea about any of this. And all I ever learned about pregnancy was lady screams her head off in a movie, water breaks straight away, everyone freaks out, run to the hospital, and a baby comes out in 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. And what we've learned through you is that's kind of the exact opposite. And so many people have a lot of fear around giving birth and going through the whole process, and everything you do is help educate people properly when they're going through this journey so they can really be properly educated going into the hospital room and going through their birth to have the best birth possible. Mm-hmm. Before we dive into all this whole conversation, I want to know why you got into this.
Because I was you. I had so many fears. I had no idea about birth. To be honest, I didn't even know if I wanted to have a baby because I didn't want to go through labour and birth because of the projection of it being so painful. And actually, my own birth story from my own mother was very much a projection of fear. I remember her telling me as a teenager that if she were to have me naturally, that we both would have died. So I had definitely been conditioned, like many in our society, in our culture here in Australia, to fear birth, that it wasn't a natural physiological function of the body. And when I found out that I was pregnant, all of that came up. So I was very much in a state of fear, anxiety, worry. And though I realised that this was a journey that I had to be the driver of, and I then started to question, and I started to actually ask some really good quality questions about what it was that I wanted for my birth experience, and that then opened me up to wanting to learn more and discovering courses like hypnobirthing for my partner and I, as well as just delving into information that I was never shared from the time I was a child. It really took me to go and source it, to realise that actually birth is a natural physiological function of the body. And when I dragged my husband along to our first hypnobirthing course, I don't think he realised how much he was going to get out of it as well, because I think for a very long time ancestrally men were left out of the birth space. It was a women's thing, and so he had no idea how to support me. I didn't know what I wanted from him either because I didn't know anything about birth. So when we did our hypnobirthing course, within the first session, our whole perception of birth changed, because I actually finally had someone describing birth and sharing the physiology of birth, which I'm fascinated and I love teaching about, the neurology, the hormones, actually what the baby does as well, that there's actually there's a third person in this journey, not just the mother and the father. There's a baby that's involved in this as well, and this is their birth too. So it was actually through my own birth experience and going through my own journey of really awakening to what was possible for me in my experience that I was able to go on and have a really beautiful, empowered birth. I'm not going to say it was easy. It was long. It was over 3 days. However, without the knowledge and the tools and the techniques that I gained from doing the course, the hypnobirthing course, there's no way I would have had the tools for the mindset, really, because birth is very much a mind over body experience, to be able to make it through those 3 days and birth my baby. And the moment I drove out of the hospital, it was honestly an instant calling that I felt that every couple needs this information. And so that started my journey to becoming a practitioner, and I've been teaching now for 13 years. I've now developed my own program, and now I'm about to teach practitioners as well.
So I want to know, before we started recording, you said this good little reframe where you were like, I'm probably going to butcher it, but how so much it's now viewed as a very medical intervention. It's like pregnancy is actually not viewed as a natural way of life. It's more viewed as this is a surgery or a medical. What did you say about that?
So the quote is, birth is not a medical event that sometimes happens naturally. It's a natural physiological event that sometimes may need medical intervention. However, culturally, especially here in Australia and in many Western countries, it has become a very highly medical event that we birth in hospitals. Cesarean rates are huge, especially here in Australia. We're at a 39% cesarean rate. We're at a 43% induction of labour rates, and that's higher in first-time parents. 80% of women are having medical pain relief, so that includes gas and air, epidurals. Epidurals are around 45%, morphine, pethidine. And so culturally now, in our Western culture, we see cesareans as normal, epidurals are normal, induction of labour is normal, which is all medicalised, and the spontaneous labour rate is falling, so less women are going into labour spontaneously. So that quote just really sums up where we are here in Australia in how we view birth.
And so I want to dive into all these things, and on this podcast as well, I'm also going to share our story, which no one actually knows about yet. Obviously you do. You helped us through all this. And so people might be hearing interventions and all these words, and they might not know what they are yet, but I want to come to it. But firstly, why do you think there is such this... Why are more people going towards all these more medical intervention sort of ways for birth and not letting it be the natural way? And is there a place for this as well?
Oh, there's always a time and place for medical intervention. And in the program I've developed and teach, I'm not just about promoting that hypnobirthing is all about having a natural drug-free water birth. It's about understanding your options and more creating, rather than a birth plan, like a birth map. So that you understand that if interventions are suggested, which it's highly likely that induction of labour may be suggested to you, or they may want to break your waters, that's an intervention. Even a vaginal examination is actually an intervention in birth. However, it has become so routine in birth that we no longer know or see it as an intervention anymore. We just expect it. And so when it comes to why... It's a great question, Morgan, and I think it's just become where in some ways we know too much now about birth, and as humans we are creatures of certainty and we want to be certain of an outcome. It's like everything in life, and if we can prepare for the worst and anything less than that is a good outcome, then what happens in birth is there's a huge projection of what's the worst thing that can happen. And the biggest projection of that is the loss of a baby, which is not what anyone wants. And so we're also birthing now in hospitals that are really busy. They're like here on the Gold Coast, like this is GCUH is one of the busiest maternity hospitals especially in Queensland. Well, I think it is in Queensland. And so when you're birthing in a system wants to work effectively. It has to manage staffing and beds. And so there is a big part around, well, has interventions become more in birth for also the system to run effectively? I'm not sure, but that is a question that we need to ask.
You know what I found very, very interesting? that 97.8% of you that listen and view this podcast haven't yet subscribed. Now, if you're looking for the one way that you can actually help us build this show into something that's going to be absolutely incredible and life-changing for you, the one thing you can do is to hit that subscribe button, because it takes a lot of time, effort, and money that we put into this podcast to make it what it is. And we've made it very clear that we never want to run ads or sponsors or anything like that on this show. So the only way that we can actually grow this channel is by subscribers. And I promise to you that if you hit that subscribe button, you help this show grow, then I'm going to continually keep bringing more, bigger, and better guests to teach you the skill set and the mindset that you wish you learned earlier in life. So please, it'll mean the world to me if you hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and do that right now. Now let's get into this episode. So here's the thing. So before going to all the labor, our goal was like, oh yeah, like let's do it as natural as possible. Especially Simona from Lithuania. She's like, no, it's natural, right? And me being a man, before I came into this, I was like, well, C-sections seem logical. It's like it works with your plan. I'm like, what's so bad about it? And we started to learn all the different things, and then so obviously we went with the idea to go, okay, let's go as natural as possible. And I remember actually halfway through the process with Simona, and she's screaming and she's like, why are we doing this? Why didn't we just do a C-section? And in that moment I go, I don't fucking know actually. Yeah. I'm like, because this sucks. Yeah. And for funny enough, we both had a reversal where we were like, fuck this. I was like, why is there such this pressure? Because I want to sort of pull it all apart. I'm like, why is this pressure on both ends? So I kind of want to even break this down. Like, why is there some sort of, why is the whole idea of as natural as possible such a big thing, even though it comes with a wild fucking journey? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, because some people could look at it and be like, well, why would I go all natural when I could just get painkillers, not feel a thing, get in there, get it done, or just book in, have a C-section, be in and out in a day and not have to go through a self process. So why is this, the whole natural sort of way, such a big thing that people are wanting?
Well, because there is a baby involved in this as well, and this is their experience too. And when we understand the physiology of labour, of birth, there are a lot of hormones that come into play that trigger things within our bodies and within the babies as well. And in planned caesareans, the babies don't get to receive that. So it can have potential knock-on effects after the birth. Now, as I mentioned before, though, there's absolutely a time and place for caesarean birth, and I'm all for women making informed decisions that are right for them. And if them feeling like a natural birth is not the right journey for them, then I'm like, all right, let's make this caesarean birth something that's going to be so magical for you, for your partner, and even for the baby in the best way possible. So let's look at that. So for me personally, I personally just want all parents to know all of the options. And when you know all of the options and you're able to ask good quality questions, you're going to get better quality answers. So therefore feel confident in your decision making and being at cause in creating the experience that you want, or even in your situation, actually in that moment being at cause and going, all right, Simona was a trooper and went so long through it, and then you both made the informed decision knowing, because you had the education beforehand, we don't want to push this any further for both Simona, for the baby. Now it's time for us to make that call and have that caesarean birth. And I hope that in time you can both reflect and be super proud of yourselves for the work. And speaking to even Simona just the other day, I feel like she was there. Like she did feel
like present,
in the whole experience.
Yeah, she definitely was. And so I want to unpack it all even from the get-go, because all the things you sort of taught us, you're like, this is what's going to happen when this happens, and then they're going to suggest this, and then they're going to come and say, hey, you're at risk of this is, and they use all this language, and there's a lot of fear that comes into this, and it paralyzes people. Yeah. And this is why they may end up having a birth that they don't really want to, or maybe that they didn't need it with these interventions and things, because as soon as it started for us, it was like I forget which movie, but it's like everything that you were saying, it's like verbatim, they're saying that. Mm-hmm. It's like the movie Night and Day with Tom Cruise. So he's like, if you get kidnapped, they're going to come and say this to you. And then it started to happen. And she's like, and that's what's happening. And these people are like, oh yeah, well, come on, let's just go put some syntocin in you. Let's get you induced and let's have this baby. I'm like, oh, hold the fuck on. Like, we're not even in labor yet. What are you talking about? So I want to sort of dive into this. So with that being said, before we dive into it, why talk around the past projections of birth through movies and the world and all this stuff, and how does this sort of shape people's preconceptions of what birth is coming to, and how can it increase people's fear?
Well, I mean, since the time that we are children only learn within their unconscious mind till about the age of 7 or 8. So what they see and what they hear it creates their beliefs and perceptions. So as children within our Western culture, things are changing, but a lot of, especially, I'm a bit older than you, but like our generation, like I'm not sure, do you remember your parents ever talking about birth to you?
No.
Right. So then we learn from either things around us, and the movies and the media play a huge role in many aspects of life in creating beliefs and perceptions about certain things. And I mean, what would you consider a typical birth scene in a movie?
Yeah, it's either two things, either driving the car and, oh my, water just broke. Everyone freaks out, has to run to the hospital straight away because the baby's 3 seconds away from coming. Or the woman sitting on her back, legs up, screaming her face off. And then the baby comes.
Yeah. So that is the projection then, that even since the time we were children, that we see birth as a medical event, that women are screaming and we perceive that as pain, and that then when we continue to grow older, then we start hearing birth stories, and people are more inclined to share the negative than the positive.
Yeah.
And so everything we're hearing, seeing, reading, like discovering about birth, most of the time is very negative. Lots of projections of pain, of tearing, of pooing, of like all of those things, cesarean, that you don't have control. You've got to do as you're told because the hospital won't allow you to go over, 41 weeks. And so when a woman falls pregnant, that's all banked in the unconscious mind, and then she's pregnant and it all starts coming up. And then when you're pregnant, it feels like everyone wants to even just heighten those projections and continue to share their birth stories. Or even for you as a guy, like I'm sure then you had other guys sharing their experience of birth with you. I was
trying to collect positive stories leading in. And also the reality is there's a higher percentage of negative stories than I would have imagined, but it's just such a new thing to us. Like I guess we just sort of thought it's what you do. But every birth's so different, and the babies are different, and it's just such a wild experience. So I was trying to collect like more positive stories, going and asking people, what was your story like? And then somebody's like, I don't want to talk about it. Oh, okay. What was yours like? Let me tell you, it was amazing. I'm like, Samara, hear this. That's an amazing one.
Right.
So we're trying to collect more, just so we could start to put into our mind of, a good, project what we want to have,
And so that then creates a lot, like for a lot of women, like no one wants to go through pain. And I'm not sure if you've noticed, everyone compares pain to childbirth in our culture. And yes, I'm not going to lie. And I hope I was very honest with you guys. Like I'm going to tell you because I've been through it. Birth is not easy. It is absolutely a journey of ups, downs, twists, turns, like emotionally, physically, all of it. And I'm not going to lie about pain either. There are many other courses and practitioners that will reduce that like expectation of pain for women. And then when they get in it, then they're like, this is not what I was told if I just breathe my baby out. I definitely do my best not to come from that aspect because I did experience pain. However, when you understand the physiology of it and why that pain is there, being able to change your perception of it can then help you like change the way you think about birth, and the way you birth will change. And so what I want to do in the work that I do with couples like yourselves is help you see a new way of thinking and feeling about birth, and helping you to create a map of, okay, if we are suggested this, then we know that we potentially could have option A, B, and even C. However, the hospital will only give us option A. So we need to empower ourselves through asking more questions, or asking for time, or asking for more information, or even a second opinion, for us to feel confident in, one, either taking the suggestion that they're recommending for the safety of mum and bubs, or being able to say, look, we have a few things we'd like to do first. And then that's where I provide a lot of tools, techniques, breath work, movement, positionings, just understanding the body and how to work with the body, in the hope that you can continue on the path that you had originally set off on, which is, to have a natural birth, and though not beating yourself up if you do need or choose the intervention as well. It's like, okay, let's work with this intervention. However, what's happening is that due to the huge conditionings and projection of fear of birth, women don't even want to try the natural way. So they will go the medical way because they think that that's going to be easier, and it's not always easier. And within our hospital system and culture, there's a lot of projection of risk. And so they will always project what the worst outcome could be. And when someone mentions stillbirth, then it's like everything just goes out the window, and they're like, many couples will fawn and just go, do whatever you need to do to save me and my baby. However, we need to understand what they mean actually by risk. And then what's not actually been explained to parents is actually also what the risks of the intervention or induction or cesarean or the epidural are itself. And that's what I really want parents or new, pregnant women to just also look into that too. Because cesarean is not necessarily the easy way out. There are huge risks with cesarean as well, but it's never spoken about.
Yeah. So I want to sort of break down into what is actually, so explain to everybody what is actually happening in the body in the lead up to birth. Because my understanding was, like, I thought the brain was really cool. Like, I've studied the brain for a long time and I love it. Then when you start explaining, because I said to Simona when we were talking about, she's like, how the hell do people go through what's meant to be one of the most painful things with no drugs? I'm like, doesn't make sense. However, your body's built that way. I'm like, I would bet that your body works in a way to give you some sort of natural painkillers. It's got to be. So explain what's actually happening in the body leading up to birth, because this is going to help pre-frame as to why some interventions may not be the best option as well.
Right. So there are a lot of changes happening within a woman's body through pregnancy. And there is this big, like, the pregnancy is a preparation phase for the birth. Hormones such as relaxin start coming in, which helped to soften all of the muscles and the ligaments within her body and around her pelvis so she can create more pelvic mobility. Then there's also prolactin, which helps to get the breasts ready for feeding. It's the mothering and nurturing hormone. However, in those final weeks, which, again, this is what's also really hard, is that as humans, we have like a 5-week span that is considered normal gestation. Anywhere between 37 to 42 weeks is normal. And some babies can be ready and will trigger all of these hormonal changes at 37 weeks and will trigger labour. Some babies aren't ready till 42 weeks. And so this is also what's also, I feel, is really hard for a lot of couples, is having the patience and the waiting. We have become so accustomed to just getting what we want when we want. We can plan, we could get anything that we want at the touch of a button. And this is something that we actually don't have consciously control over. It's all to do with the body, and it's actually the baby. So as the baby is maturing in the womb, their lungs are maturing, their brain is maturing, the baby actually sends a precursor of hormones to their placenta, which raises estrogen within the placenta, which then causes like a call out to our body and our brain that tells us the baby's actually ready. So as much as we think we can do all of these things to bring labour on, it's actually the baby that they believe that triggers all the hormonal changes, and that the baby kind of controls the labour. So it's not actually us in some ways, it's the baby. And they talk about that there is a feedback loop between mother and baby. So there's this intricate talking of the baby releasing hormones, we're releasing hormones. And when the baby's ready and cues our body, there is a huge cocktail of hormones that come into play for very particular reasons. And yes, one is for pain relief. One is to also to connect to the pleasure and reward centers of the brain for the mother, to create calm and connection and make her go inward. I call it labor land. It's this world that we kind of are in between. But all of these beautiful hormones like oxytocin. So oxytocin is a hormone of love and connection and bonding. It is released when we feel like love for someone, for each other, through hugging, through kissing, through nipple and clitoral stimulation. Like, it's a very sexual hormone. And it creates a beautiful cementing of a bond between people and like humans. We're very social mammals. And when we can really strip it all back and realize that we are mammals, this is mammalian birth, this is how nature has designed us, just like all other mammals on this planet. Just as we can grow our babies, we are also designed to birth our babies. Like, we are not flawed. We can birth our babies. And through this beautiful hormonal release and the hormonal system, this assists in this experience that, or this rite of passage that we get to go through either together as a couple or, you know, for the woman as she's birthing herself from a maiden to a mother. And so when oxytocin is produced within the hypothalamus, it's released in bursts, and they believe it's from the feedback from the baby that stimulates this. And they've discovered that we have thousands of oxytocin receptors located all around the muscles of the uterus. And when these receptors are all online and then our brain releases oxytocin, that's what creates contractions. Now, during a contraction, there is, as the uterus is tightening and contracting and the muscles are contracting, there is a lack of blood flow and oxygen going to the muscles and also to the baby. So there is a buildup of lactic acid. And that's what causes what women experience as the pain during a contraction. It's this buildup of lactic acid. Then when the contraction ends, the blood rushes back in, and then we feel normal between contractions. Now, another hormone that comes into play big time is called beta endorphins. So endorphins are the body's natural hormone of pleasure. They are a body's natural like pain relieving hormone, and we release huge levels of endorphins during labour to reduce pain. And these hormones, oxytocin and endorphins, work together to actually bring women really inward into this. It's like a transcendental state in a way. I'm not sure if you ever noticed it with Simona. Like it's like she'll come out of it and then she'll drop back in. She may look sleepy. Those hormones are designed for that. There's so many other, there's adrenaline that's involved as well. Like, birth is actually meant to be efficient, because when you think about us as mammals in the wild, if we were out in the wild birthing, it's not safe for us due to predators to be labouring for like days and days or pushing for long periods of time. So adrenaline comes in to make birth efficient right at the end. It's also present at the start, just slightly, and then it drops off. However, if a woman goes into a state of fear, anxiety, stress, or worry, that adrenaline comes right up.
Which then will lower the oxytocin, right?
Right. And
which is the one hormone that we need high to start labour properly.
Exactly. And oxytocin is a very shy hormone. It will only come out when we're in an environment where we feel safe and private and unobserved. It is a very connective hormone. So when we think about how our environment plays an important role in how we birth, we've gone from birthing at home where all of our normal things are around us, the smells of home, the comforts of home, people we know like family and that being there, and we've moved the environment into a space where there are bright white lights, beeping machines, people we've never met before wanting to come in and stick their fingers in our vagina to make sure that we're dilating. So the environment's very much changed for us as well. And there's also a lot of pressure too on women, being told if you don't have your baby by 41 weeks, we're going to be inducing you because it's hospital policy. And so that causes a lot of pressure, fear and stress.
So this is all the stuff I want to go into, right? Because one of the biggest things I sort of learned from you is if you go through the natural way, all these hormones and chemicals start working together, which will actually really help your body go through the birthing process, act as natural painkillers and sort of support you through that. One of the chemicals we've got to increase as much as we can to induce labor is oxytocin. One of the biggest killers of oxytocin is fear, adrenaline and all these sorts of...
stressor hormones.
Yeah, these stresses, right? So I want to start to tell our birth story at the same time because what happened to us was we were at like 30, 38, 39 weeks or something. And then, and what started to happen was people were like, oh, you're high. And then someone said, you're high risk now because our baby was big.
Yeah.
Turns out he was actually a big motherfucker.
He was.
They were right, actually.
He was big.
He was huge. He's a big Viking boy. Yeah. So, but what you've said is like a lot of people get labeled that, oh, big baby. Then it comes out, it's actually small. So from the get-go, people make these assumptions. Your baby might be big, even though they can't measure it correctly. They make assumptions, your baby might be big, so therefore now you're high risk. So we turned into from a normal, healthy, amazing birth to, oh, you guys are high risk, you need to be induced next week. That's what it was. And we're like, huh? So we're at 38 weeks and we're like, thank you, but no thank you. We're just going to keep going. And I mean, when the baby wants to come, because we also understood that, that's what I want to dive into. These manufactured inductions give you fake oxytocin. So it doesn't create the ripple effect of the natural hormones happening, which will cause all these other problems down the road. So they said to us, yep, you got to be induced. And we said, thank you, no thank you. We're not doing that. And we kept going. And then at 40 weeks, when this is the due date, and everyone's like, oh my God, when's he coming? And then again, we really need to induce you. You need to be induced. And then it was 40 weeks and a few days where we had like a little, not a scare, but Simona had some blood and we were like, oh shit, why don't we go to a hospital? So we went to the hospital and there was some light contractions starting. And then they said, oh, there's some contractions. Birth starting. And we're like, oh, okay. Looks like, we might as well just stay here then. And she goes, yeah. Let's just get you in the other room and we'll get you hooked up and let's just get you induced and we'll have that baby, hey? And we're like, wait, what? It's like 2:00 in the morning. We're about to go to bed and we're like, wait, hang on, what? And she's like, well, there's a contraction, so let's just, get some oxytocin in you, we'll get you induced, and let's go pop out a baby. I'm like, this is not fucking starting yet. It's 2:00 in the morning for starters. Let us sleep, and then we'll start in the morning. And it was this, and what happened was we got sort of put into a position where I looked like an idiot for questioning someone's authority. They were a doctor, right? It's like, so here's I am some dude, first birth, what do I know, right? And then they're like, I am a doctor, right? And this is a big thing I want to sort of start going with the language and the framing and all these sorts of things. Unfortunately for them is they went up against someone who's a master of negotiation. So it was an interesting journey for them the whole time as well. But we stayed in the hospital that night and we said, we're not doing that. We're going to go to sleep, let her sleep, and we'll see what happens in the morning. So we were just waiting for it to naturally start happening. It didn't happen. And the next day we're still sitting in hospital. I said to someone, do you want to stay here? And she's like, well, maybe, like, what if I'd feel so bad if we went home. And because then they started saying, well, your waters have broken. But they couldn't tell us with absolute certainty. We're like, well, have they or they haven't? It was just this weird confusion. And she stayed there for one more night because it made her feel better. And the next day, I said, what do you feel like doing now? She goes, I'm over this. Let's go home. I said, good. Let's go home. We went home and we thought maybe it was going to start again that day. Then we went for over a week more. 41 and 3 days, 41 weeks and 3 or 4 days. And I tell you what, every single day when we woke up, we're like, still no baby? Fuck me. So it was that interesting thing. So I want to dive into the whole interventions and stuff. So what is considered an intervention and why is it something that you don't really support?
Well, it's not that I don't support it, actually. It's understanding it and the time and place where, yes, it may be needed or that it may be necessary. So there's always a time and place for medical intervention. I really want to express that. Please note, I'm not a medical professional, so nowhere in my course do I ever give medical advice. I'm all about education. It's understanding that there have been so many interventions that have come into birth that have become so routine, like vaginal examinations, for example. They're an intervention. They're intervening with the natural process, right? Then you've got things like syntocinon. So syntocinon stands for synthetic oxytocin. And like, it's pretty amazing that science has been able to mimic a natural hormone. Like, if you were to look under a microscope, the molecules of syntocinon and the molecules of oxytocin, they look the same. However, the way that it is worded and the language that is used to parents is that it is the same. They actually call it the oxytocin infusion. And so for many first-time parents, they're like, oh, well, that's natural. There is an important difference though, all right? Syntocinon is administered via a cannula hooked up to an infusion or a drip. So it's controlled by a machine. And oxytocin is released from the brain and is stimulated by feedback, by what the baby needs, the environment, all of that, how the mother's feeling, all of that comes into play. With an induced labour, when it's just dripped into the body, women literally go from having no contractions to they are in full labour within a 2-hour period. And so there's this whole phase of labour that is missed that allows the build-up of natural hormones, like in a physiological labour, that come in to help reduce pain. And it is said, and this more comes from studies done by Dr. Sarah Buckley, Dr. Rachel Reed, who are very prominent in the birth space, that when we intervene with birth through things like the synthetic hormones or potentially other ways, it can create what's called a hormonal gap. So the natural hormones of birth aren't able to come in because syntocinon cannot be altered by feedback, and it can at times potentially block those hormones. So where nature has designed it to help reduce pain, the woman's not releasing endorphins, so it feels more intense. The baby's also not receiving the calm connective hormones either, so it's more intense for them. They break the waters before they hook up syntocinon, so that is also what makes it potentially more intense for the mother and for the baby. And what can happen is if they give you an overdose of the synthetic oxytocin, it can create hyperstimulation of the uterus, where the uterus is just going through contraction after contraction after contraction, which then can cause distress of the baby, which then leads to emergency cesarean. So medical caregivers have got very good at inducing labour. They do it every day, especially when you look at our induction rates. That's very normal within our system. So they do have to, every woman is different in the dosage and things like that. However, it's never explained to a woman that there was an Australian study that was done that found that induction of labour with syntocinon increases rates of ending up in an emergency caesarean from 12.6%, which in spontaneous labour, to almost 27%. And so when parents are considering options and the medical system are talking about risk and they're projecting lots of fear about the risk of stillbirth, we need to understand what they mean by that. Like, what is the actual risk? And they will use language like, well, your risk increases, your risk rises, your risk doubles, your risk goes up. And for someone that isn't aware of how, the unconscious mind perceives things, the unconscious mind will go straight to, oh my God, there's a risk, I need to do this. However, what is not discussed is what the actual risk of the syntocinon is, of the cesarean is either. And so are couples really in a position where they're making an informed decision when they're not being given all of the information?
So I want to talk about the language that is used and all of these frames and stuff they set, because this is what's really got me to where I am in life is trying to understand where people's views of the world and speaking in ways that they understand to influence them to do what I want them to do.
You're very good at that.
Right? And through this whole birth system has been the first time I've really been, not I wouldn't say challenged, but really where I'm like, holy shit, this is a huge universal thing where my view of the world is always like everything's figure outable. I'm going to manage risk. I'm not going to avoid it. I'm going to manage risk. Where the average person, that's in the system is very like, we don't really manage risk. We eliminate all types of risk as much as possible. Where I jump out of fucking airplanes for fun. Like there's risk, but I manage it. I jump with 2 parachutes, right? But so this is the first time I've really seen, for example, so let me keep going with the story, right? So long story short, we eventually go into labor. We go to the hospital. We're at the hospital. It was actually a really good start. It was a really great start. It was like amazing. Great people there. It was no like lights and shit and forms in our faces and stuff. And it was really good. And everything started to get going. But what we had to battle with leading up to that actually was when we're in the hospital, they're like, well, you're over and your waters are broken. So now you're at risk of infection. We need to give you and the baby antibiotics. I was like, I don't take fucking antibiotics on a good day. Sure as hell not giving it to a brand new baby. I'm like, what's the risk? And I remember speaking with one of the doctors and I said, so you said there's a risk. What type of risk? She goes, it's high. I said, well, how high? She goes, I don't actually know. I said, then how are you in a position to tell me what the risks are when you don't know the actual risks? Can you go find out the risks and come back to me? And she came back to me a little while later, and she's like, well, it's this percentage. And I said, it's under 1%. And I'm like, then let's just say hypothetically, the bad outcome that you're saying is going to happen. What is the outcome we're talking about? She goes, he can get an infection. And then what? Well, it could get bad. I say, well, okay, if he got an infection, or if the baby or Shimo got an infection, could we then give antibiotics? She goes, yes. I said, would it fix it? Yes. Then let's just wait until that happens, because I never take antibiotics as a prevention. I take it when I'm fucking sick. Right. So I'm like, why don't we, if this less than 1% chance thing happens, why don't then we do something about it versus, just these little tiny things. But it's because I was able to understand what they were putting on. And what I really want to what I want to dive into, actually, I think at the end of I want to open up all these different things first. And then I want to break down between us both as to why this happens, what's happening in the brain, why people are fawning like you talk about. And I want to break down all this. But run us through the language that people are going to be faced with, right? The people watching this, about to go have birth, what's the language, what's the frames, what's these things that they're most likely going to have put on them, and what do they actually mean?
Well, I mean, it all really starts right from the moment that you realise you're pregnant, and we're going and having scans and we're being given a due date. Like, we put all this expectation on a baby coming by this one date. It's what everyone asks, when's your due date? And
what's the percentage of people actually giving birth on their due date?
5%.
5%.
Only 5%. So, and what it's based off is a formula that was created by a male obstetrician in the early 1800s, where back in time, women used to track their cycles by the moon, and they would, if they miss one of their monthly bleeds, they would estimate that they would give birth within 10 moon cycles, which equal to around 42 weeks. Now, when Western medicine started to come in, they would look at the woman's body as if it was like a machine with definable and measurable parts and processes where they could predict when things would happen. And so they put together this formula based on women having a 28-day cycle, ovulating on day 14 and conceiving on the day of insemination. And there was some, plus minus within the formula to get this 40th week. However, they base it off the first day of your last menstrual cycle. So if you actually did have a cycle that ovulated on day 14, you're actually not pregnant for those 2 weeks till then. Yet that is counted within this 40-week due date. Then once we're pushing that date, then we're referred to as being overdue. Like there's something wrong, right?
And the presuppositions there, it's like you're late. Yeah.
Right. Like your baby's in a library book, right? And plus your baby and your body have no idea what this date is. Like, this is the thing. And then we get to 41 weeks, and then the hospitals have policies. And once again, there is, in the systematic world that we live in, it's very much projected like you stay within the policies, the rules, the law, and you will be looked after. You go outside of that, then there is a fear that then they won't be looked after. So when they're told that we won't allow you, again, that is a projection. Like, well, you don't have any right. You're birthing in our hospital. This is what we do. Mm-hmm. And yes, it's important to understand why these policies are in place, okay, for the health and safety of you, and though also for the hospital itself to make sure that the hospital is safe.
So, because what I saw was you got us, who we're trying to optimize for our goal, which is a great birth. Mm-hmm. The hospitals, they're optimizing for, we have to have zero risk. Because I understand, this is what I just saw. It's like, we're saying, no, we are going to do this. And like, but we don't want you, because if there's a 0.1% chance, we can't run that, because if something does happen, then we're fucked. And I get where they're at. And it is a very tricky thing. And because, especially what we saw as well, this whole journey, it's very up to everyone's own discretion.
Of course. All
the midwives that would change over, one midwife will come and she'd be like, this is what you need to do. Da, da, da. The next one comes and she goes, just relax, don't worry about it. Just do it like this. Show us the mum technique, and we're like, everyone's got a very different angle.
They do.
And that's why I really understood. I'm like, they can't actually just let people in hospitals have their own view, because views are very subjective. It has to be the doctor said, well, what our policy is. And because somebody had to come along and say, if somebody says this, you have to refer to this, because this is the data and this is that you can't give your opinion.
Right.
And so I can really see how hard it could be in them. And that's what people need to understand, because you're fighting against what somebody had to put to protect their own ass.
Right.
Versus knowing you can ask questions to get really your outcome.
So we're birthing in a very fear-based system. The cultures within the hospital, the hierarchy, the fear of, right, yes, they are human too. They are creatures of certainty. They want to be certain of an outcome. So for them, they have more certainty in what they can control, and they can control an induction and they can control a cesarean. They cannot control physiology. So we've got these two parties that are coming together, which do, and in the end, when we really chunk up, they want the same thing, which is a healthy mum and a healthy baby. However, how they both look at how they're going to achieve that, is different. And so that's where what I do in being an educator is I want to be the bridge between you as a couple and what is important for you to know, and also the hospital and where they're at. And let's bridge that gap of lack of communication or even time, really. Like, women only have 15 minutes in an appointment. In what I do, I teach, 14 to 15 hours of information. They don't have time to do that. So actually, when couples are educated and they know their options and they can ask good questions, it actually helps the hospital more also feel confident in you as a couple in the decisions you make. Because when they have a couple that turns up that has done nothing, like, I literally just dropped off a TENS machine to a mum, and she openly admitted, I just don't want to know anything. I'm like so anxious about it, so I'm just going to wing it. And I just stood there and I'm like, oh, wow. Like,
yeah. Okay. I can understand how hard that would make everyone's job at the hospital. And this is why, like, they've had to, the hospital have had to optimize for the average person not having a fucking idea.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. So if they come in, they're like, I got no idea. They're like, well, we're going to do what's best for us.
Right.
Because,
and what we know.
at least we're planned.
Exactly.
And this is our plan, right?
Yeah.
So so the whole journey was going for hours. And then we sort of got towards what I thought was going to be the end. And so I was like, okay, we suggested, okay, let's go into the bath. And I actually forget why. Oh, because I think they said, because they thought the waters broke, right? So they kept running this narrative of like, well, we suspect they broke. But Simona was like, I don't have no contrast. It's my first birth. However, I don't think they're broken, right? So we kept having this narrative. So then we go, okay, we want to get into the water. And then the narrative was, oh, but your waters are broken, so we can't allow that. I said, but you don't know for certain they have. So they're like, well, that's true. I said, so can you start filling up the bath then? And they're like, oh, well, we'll have to get you to write off this thing. And then because I was like, yeah, I'll write off whatever you want. Just fill the bath. And then in the meantime, you get that thing. Because then what was happening was they're like, oh, that's okay. We'll fill the bath, but you can't get in until you sign this document saying that you wear all the risks and blah, blah, blah. I said, fine, get the document, keep filling up the bath. And then next minute I was just like, well, we're just going to get in the bath, still giving the document. I'm just going to get in there though until you're ready. Okay, cool. But until you're ready, don't come back to me until you have a piece of paper, okay? Okay. And then we're in the bath. and then, and I get it, and I can totally get it from each side. And they're like, oh, but our risk, but also like Simona's going through the most hectic process of her fucking life. And this bath's really going to help the process. I'm optimizing for that, not your fucking piece of paper.
Right.
So that's kind of what it was. And we also had a lot of, the doctors wanted to keep coming in. And I was like, you're not coming in because we're creating this space where we keep oxytocin high. An oxytocin killer is not a doctor coming in with a fucking clipboard, having no idea who you are because you saw a data point on this machine out there and coming in and speaking doctor language when she's out of it. And they were like, we can't speak to you, we've got to speak to her. I said, mate, she's, what the fuck? It's like, she can't give it a proper... She doesn't, you know what I mean? Like, she's so out of it. She's literally on drugs.
on her own hormonal drugs.
Yeah, it's the same. It's like you couldn't, a testimonial wouldn't stand up in court if you were high. Yeah. So why would you know what I mean? It's like, I'm like, speak to me and I can help. Right. There's all this stuff that we kind of knew about it. So then all this is like a journey the whole time doing this, just having to negotiate and argue, question, because they're like, one thing, the heart rate's dropping. I said, compared to what? Well, compared to what it was before. Well, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, and she's in the bath. He's probably really relaxed. Yeah. I said, maybe just let him go. I'm like, are you concerned? She's like, oh, no, it's not that concerning, but just want to let you know. Don't let me know until you're concerned then. Like, right. So many of these things. So I want to, as we keep sharing the story, dive into, so when people can have, I guess the major interventions are breaking the waters, and the syntocin. And what you said to me is this can sort of lead you, because it's not starting the natural process of all these hormones, it's going to most likely end up more in the epidural and the other sort of more hectic of ways. Yeah, so can you dive into this as to what are the, I guess, risks now of going down that avenue?
Well, like anything, there are the benefits, and though the risks can be things like So when they induce a labour, there is a process that it's not just you go in, they hook you up to the drip and bang. Like, there is actually a process, and sometimes it can take days. And a lot of parents don't realise this. The process of ripening the cervix through other synthetic hormones, or things called like a balloon catheter, which is like a device that they insert into the cervix. Then breaking the waters. So in physiology, and this is what's like quite funny, because when you say, oh, we watch the movies, the waters break, like a lot of people believe that the first sign of labour is waters breaking. However, most of the time in a physiological birth, they actually stay intact, because the membranes, or the squidgy fluid all around the baby, actually plays an important role in protecting the baby from those intense uterine contractions and protects your umbilical cord from compression. So in an induced labour, we're removing that protective barrier from the baby. Only around 10% of women's waters will release as the first sign of labour before contractions start. So then that can increase, because then it's baby directly on cervix, muscle directly on baby. That is what can be linked to the higher intense feelings of the contractions in an induced labour. Then with the syntocin, the main risks of syntocin, which I've helped hundreds of women have beautiful inductions with syntocin. So it's not about fearing induction, it's understanding it and actually having tools and techniques to be able to work with it, to then reduce these risks of ending up where the syntocin creates overstimulation of the uterus, which then, if the uterus, every time there is a contraction, the muscles contract onto the placenta. And actually, I'm going to get out my little, my prop here.
Yeah.
Right? So this
What have we got here?
So this is actually a representation of a baby within the membranes, and this is the placenta here.
Oh.
So normally there's then fluid. However, this is mesh. I can't have fluid in here. So the placenta is attached on the inside of the uterine wall. So when there is a contraction and the muscles tighten onto the placenta, there's a natural interruption of blood flow and oxygen from the placenta to the baby. So during a contraction, if you do choose to be monitored or you allow them to monitor you, you'll see that during a contraction there's a natural decel of the baby's heart rate slightly that comes down. When the contraction ends and all of that blood flow comes back into the uterus, goes back to the baby, then their heart rate comes back up. So with a physiological birth, the contraction pattern tends to be like where there are anywhere between 2, 3, 5, 10 to 20 minutes between contractions, depending on what phase of the labour you're in. With syntocinon, because it cannot be altered by feedback, if they give you too high a dose of syntocinon, the uterus is hit with this synthetic hormone. Then it creates contraction after contraction after contraction, which then there's not enough gap between each contraction to reoxygenate the baby. This is where the baby's heart rate starts to decel. Then panic happens in the room. Red buttons are pushed. There's all these people in the room. The baby's going into distress, which then causes a distress in the mother and the father. And the room just gets so heightened. And if the baby's heart rate doesn't recover after they turn the syntocinon down, then this is then what leads to, one, either epidurals to relax the body more and they'll leave the syntocinon off for a while, or also because it's so intense, more women want epidurals during an induced labour, that then if the baby continues to be in distress, though, then that's what sends them into an emergency cesarean, which can be very hectic and very traumatic for couples who have not prepared for and what that could be like.
Yeah.
So again, in the program I've created, I talk about cesarean births. I've been trained in a number of different hypnobirthing programs, and they don't teach about cesarean birth in their programs. For me, I would be doing a disservice to my clients if I didn't teach about cesarean birth, because we need to be prepared for all births.
Yeah. So this can high chance lead into epidural. So my understanding was epidural, you're then somewhat like paralyzed, almost like you're numb, meaning then you have to give birth on your back.
Yes.
So what's the problem? Because this is also the idea of that I had in my head of giving birth. Every woman in movies have always been on their back. So why is a back birth not the most what's the right word? The most favorable way?
Yeah, it's not the optimal position.
Yeah.
Like no other mammal within this world births flat on their back. Remember, we're mammals, and when we can see the representation of the female pelvis, we have different stations of the pelvis, and we can actually modify the different stations through different movements. And when we are on our back, the sacrum is compressed, and if you are watching this on camera or on video, you can clearly see from the pelvis I'm holding here that it compresses on the sacrum, which then closes the outlet pelvis. We then need to push our baby up an incline against gravity.
Yeah.
And then they may tell you to pull your knees out, and you can see what that does.
Makes it smaller again.
Makes it smaller. So look, that's where stirrups actually do support the pelvis in more of an internal rotation, which opens, but then we've still got this compression of the sacrum and the tailbone. So if we're upright, moving then that tailbone can move out of the way.
So on all fours.
On all fours, leaning over the top of the bed, in the birth pool, leaning over a ball. And when we can create movement, you can see it kind of creates pelvic mobility as well. And that's something that I also really teach in my classes is movement, positioning, and also how to actually make space if the baby does shift into a not so optimal position, which is unfortunately what happened with your beautiful, healthy big bubba, is that his head went into a position that wasn't able to fit through and come out.
So this is the interesting thing, but this is why it's so good to understand all this as well, because what happened to us, it was a long day and night. And then we really, really did think at 3 o'clock in the morning or so, we're like, this is almost at the end. And it just kept going and going and going and going and going and going and going. And we were sort of avoidant to interventions and stuff. So we were sort of not really too keen on all these interventions and stuff. But then when we're getting to that point, we're kind of like, bro, fucking help us out with something. So we're like, because we understood when is the time to utilize the things. Yeah. Because everything definitely has a place. It just might not come at the time when they are just pushing it on you. And so we were like, okay, let's see how dilated she is. And they're like, and they said 10 centimeters. And we're like, oh my God, okay, it's gotta fucking be here. It's gotta be so soon. Kept going. Then we had a midwife shift. And then our midwife actually came on our one we had for the whole time. And then she's like, no, you're not 10 centimeters, you're at 9.5. And we're like, oh my, and we're like, we're so close.
We're so close, yeah.
We're like, what the fuck's the problem though? And she's like, there's swelling. And that's what they kept saying. They're like, there's swelling on his hair. We can feel there's swelling. And because you've been hitting this for so long, they're like, it might be so fucking swelled. It's just not happening anymore. And we're like, oh my God. So they did an ultrasound, turned out baby was facing up. So not in the most optimal position. And they were like, okay, let's try some natural things that you've taught us, like try and move. And we tried that for about an hour and then nothing happened again. Now we're talking like 8:30 in the morning and we've been awake for 27 hours or something now. So your decisions start to drop at that point, especially when fresh eyes, fresh brains come on and they've got different perspectives and you're like, and then they were like, what they suggested, they're like, why don't you do an epidural now to see if we can relax our last little bit and see if it works? And again, because we understood the why, the what, and the purpose of what it was going to do, we sort of, Simone and I discussed it and we're like, that's not a bad idea because if this doesn't work, what's going to have to come next is probably a C-section. So we were like, well, we need the epidural anyway for a C-section. So we're both like, then why don't we just do this? That way we're prepared for our next phase, our next part of the plan if we need, and hopefully it's going to help here. So we did it, and I think 50% epidurals work. Yeah. This one didn't. And we sat there, and the poor thing, Simone was just going through a world of hell. And then it was about 10 o'clock or something in the morning where they were like, what do you guys think about actually a C-section now? And then we both looked at each other and we're like, we've done a good fucking go.
Yeah, you did.
And Simona just fought, not fought, it's not about fighting, but, she did her absolute best she went so long without needing any sort of thing. And it's just, for some reason, there was something that just wasn't really working. And we both sort of had that feeling. And then so we just looked at each other and we're like, fuck it, let's just do it. And she felt bad for a second. She was like, I feel like I failed. And we're like, no, remember the goal. Because our goal was we're going to deliver a healthy baby. Yeah. Right? That was the goal. So, and because of modern science, we have multiple different ways to get there. Primary plan is natural. Then there's an alternative, and there's a contingency, then an emergency. And so then we made a decision to go do the C-section. And like you said, we made it as beautiful as we could. So we're both in there. We made sure that there was a birth song. Yes. And then this massive chubby baby came out. And what made us feel really good actually about it all was we looked and he had this huge ring around his head. And the doctors said, they're like, there's no way in hell he was coming out. Yeah. Like he got lodged. Yeah. Yeah. So then they call it an obstructed labor. Yeah. And they were like, this is why C-sections were essentially made. Because they're like, this is because we were like, well, what would you do back in the day? What would they do back in the day? What do they do in tribes in Africa? And they're like, probably one of you might have died in this situation. It would have gone for longer and longer and longer. And we're like, oh, so it was a pretty good decision. They're like, very good decision. So, we didn't leave there feeling bad about it at all. It was a very because of all the things we learned with you, we were ready for that because we were ready for all our plans. And it just happened when we got there. We were like, okay, well, I know we've tried everything actually, and cool, awesome. Yeah. Isn't it awesome we have this as an option? And then we went with it.
Yeah. And that for me is what's most important, that that was your journey. And for some reason, sometimes we don't know these babies will choose this. And when you can understand your options, that you have options, then yes, you were still, both of you were the driver of that experience still.
Yeah.
And although it didn't end up playing out the way you had originally hoped for, that was still your journey. And it's also about owning it and really being able to stop and reflect. And like I said right at the start, being super proud of yourselves of every step of the way. You made the decisions that were right for you. And you're right, and that's where Simona felt within herself, something's not right. And I remember her telling me, she said something's not right. And there is an intuitive knowing also with women. And that's something that I hope that I can also share in, sometimes if there's an intuitive knowing within yourself that a natural birth isn't for you, okay, let's go for the cesarean. It doesn't even have to be a medical reason. It's okay. And this is what's amazing, that we do have choice. However, what's happening though is women are being led into certain births by what the system want for them, not exactly what they want, because they don't know what they want.
So why is that happening? So talk about the fawn response and why are so many people sort of going through this process and coming out the other end and feeling like they just went through a whole whirlwind and going, wait, all this stuff just happened to me and I didn't actually say I wanted it, or, and I've had some pretty crazy experiences. So why is this happening?
Yeah, so suggestion is a big thing. There is lots of seeding throughout the whole process of I know you did experience a big baby, but the seeding of big babies, which then causes fear. And we need to understand, again, the neurology around things, that oxytocin will be wiped out as soon as we are in an environment or are presented or even have thoughts that are causing feelings of fear, anxiety, stress, worry, or pressure. When we're in that state, we're triggering the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight and flight system. And just like mammals in the wild, if they feel threatened in their environment and labour has started, everything will stop. The sympathetic nervous system will take over. Blood will go to the extremities to help them have the energy to run and get away for survival, right? It's innate within us. Survival is innate. And though there's more than just running and fighting. There is freeze, which many of your listeners probably would have heard of, the fight, flight or freeze. However, over the last, I would say about 5 years or so, I've really been delving into learning more about a fourth response that is probably more common in women, and that's known as the fawning or appeasing or pleasing. So when we're in a situation where we maybe feel threatened or we don't feel safe, sometimes it may be easier for the survival of us or the safety of us to just do what that threat wants, that we will prolong our life longer by just appeasing to that threat. And in the concept of labour and birth, how this can play out for women, especially for women who are even self-proclaimed people pleasers. Women are nurturers. They want to look after people first a lot of the time rather than themselves. And this can play out massively in birth. And it plays out in the way of, once again, us being conditioned in a very hierarchical system. We pedestal medical caregivers, and especially when there are a lot of male obstetricians, men also, and we've got to look at history too. Historically, even 150 years ago, us as women had no rights. We would have to appease and we would fawn to men, we had no rights for ourselves. So there's still a lot of ancestral passing down of that onto women and girls, being told, be a good girl, don't be difficult, don't be rude, be respectful. There's a big conditioning in many women to be like that. So when we're in a situation where we're going into an environment that we don't know with people we've never met before, maybe men who are doctors, being told that if we don't induce your labour, your baby's going to die, immediately the woman will go into, I will sacrifice myself for my baby. And the fawning response can come in and show up in the way of just not even asking questions. It's like everything just goes out the window, like they're not able to think rationally or analytically to ask questions. And so before they know it, things are then just happening to them and they don't speak up.
Yeah, so when you were telling me all this, I was like, I can break down exactly why this happens. And it's crazy because and people need to understand this, because anyone who's ever been conned before, been in a narcissistic relationship before, ever had anyone screw them over, this has happened to them without them knowing about it. Because there's so one of my mentors, Chase, he's a government brainwashing expert and government interrogation expert. Probably one of the he is the smartest person I've talked to when it comes to understanding human behavior, why we do what we do. Because for 20 years he had to learn how to steal information from terrorists and then train it to CIA operatives so they could do the same thing, and then interrogate people to get information out of them. Yeah. And what he broke it down is to four things that makes anyone completely just controllable. Mm-hmm. And he broke it down to, it's called the fate model. So the first one is focus. So the first one is focus. If we can take focus from, if I can get anyone's focus, I have your immediate attention, right? So everything's just all on me. That's why a pattern interrupt works, right? Everyone in sales understands pattern interrupt because everyone's in their normal day-to-day and they're like, da, 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 bang. Something happens where you're not used to, and you're like, all of your focus on it, immediately suggestible. So when I hypnotize people, sometimes people ask me, they're like, oh, how can you hypnotize people so fast? Well, all I got to do is create a bigger enough pattern interrupt where in that moment after, they're so suggestible, and they'll do anything I say, which is sleep, right? So number one, focus. But so then you look at, why would this, where's the focus coming in the hospital? Well, I don't know. Big bright lights, new place, never been there before. Mm-hmm. Everything's different. It's a huge pattern interrupt. It's not, we don't live in hospitals. No. So going in there, everything's new, everything's novel. It's a huge focus. That's the number one thing to influence anyone. Next one is authority. So the authority bias is one of the biggest biases that they found. That's the whole reason why German soldiers killed Jewish people, not because, and there was even some that when they did the trials, they said they knew what they were doing was wrong, but I was just following orders. And it's like, how could you commit murder? Well, I was following orders by my authority.
Right.
And that goes back to the tribal days. If we didn't obey our authority, we got killed. So that's another thing hardwired into our DNA. Okay, so it's like, well, you're the doctor, so I'm not even going to question. And it's not a logical thing. It happens on an immediate. So we've got huge pattern interrupt. I know what's going on. Doctor comes in. Oh, this. Okay, yes. Yeah. And you're saying yes. You don't even know what's happening.
Right.
This is how people will con people. I mean, they probably don't know this. But what Chase also, he studied cult leaders and recruiters. He's like, how do they not just recruit people, but brainwash them to, some cults kill themselves for the tribe, you know? So authority, next one, tribe, right? So we have the bystander effect is another cognitive bias that plays out. So we need to do what other people around us are doing.
Right.
So if everyone's doing this and there's 3 doctors in here against me, well, shit, everyone's doing it. I mean, there's high risk, all these sorts of things get played out where I've got to obey, I've got to be the tribe. And the last one is emotional drivers, pleasure and pain. Well, if we don't do this, here's the pleasure you might get. Here's the pain you could face. Here's the risk, here's the da-da-da-da. So what happens is it creates an immediate fawn in the body where they're like, okay, and extremely 100% suggestible to do anything. This is why people would go through this whole process, come out the other end when everything settles and go, what the fuck just happened?
Exactly. And that's, I work with a lot of women through birth trauma, and this is when I started to really work with them on a deep level through trauma, hearing the stories and noticing those points where the fawning came in, and then it was like they were totally derailed from the experience they were creating or what they didn't know was right or wrong, because in that moment had no capacity to be able to advocate for themselves, which women shouldn't have to advocate for themselves. They can't. Just like you explained how Simona was in the pool, like she could not advocate for herself. So that's why it's so important that birth partners, the dads, whoever the women are choosing, I teach a lot of same-sex couples, like whoever it is that you're choosing to support you, that they have a full idea of, one, physiology, the birth map, the tools and techniques, and negotiation skills in being
Maybe
able
you can
to
bring me into your course to teach.
I think I need you to create a module for men, like honestly, because in that moment we're not capable. And I realized, and I would have shared this with you, I fawned a number of times in my own birth, and I am quite a strong, highly spoken person. Like I will fight for what I believe in and things like that. But when you're in that environment and you are in one of the most vulnerable moments of your life, going through this transition where you are about to birth yourself as a mother, and you get in there and you are spoken to or at in a particular tone, and you turn into a little girl, like you can. And I'm not saying all women do this. However, there was this one moment where I asked for something that I was really, really wanting, and that was to have time to birth my placenta naturally. And the midwife's tone towards me asking for that was, I don't have time to wait for your placenta. And immediately I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like I felt like,
you're putting them out.
How dare I? And that's and I fawned in that moment.
And also after the process, so like one of the things, CIA did after September 11, they created all these black sites around the world where there would be off the grid places where they would use advanced interrogation techniques, they called it, but it was pure torturing techniques to extort information from terrorists and shit. Right. And one of the most common tools in torture and interrogation is sleep deprivation. I mean, your brain doesn't work, and you're way more, you're not as attached to things. Like if you've been deprived, you haven't slept all day, all night, you're nowhere near as intelligent. They've actually shown people who are extreme sleep deprived. Yes. They have similar effects in their cognitive function to what they are if you're drunk. So you're completely impaired. So it's a similar thing, because like after the whole process, like you're cooked. Like your brain's similar to you're having a drug come down and you're drunk. Yes. And they're like yelling with all the, like this is why, like you ladies don't have much of a fighting chance. Like you have a lot of cards against you.
No, we don't. Unless
you have a plan.
We have good support. Mm-hmm. We choose our medical caregivers wisely and know that you have a choice. Like I think this is another thing that I say to women preparing for pregnancy: do your research ahead of time. Don't just settle for what the GP then sends you to. Like interview different models of care and know the differences. And is there midwifery-led care, which is the gold standard of care, is continuity of care. However, it's not always going to play out like that. Just I experienced it, and so did you. Sometimes your midwife's not available that day, so you've got to be prepared for that as well. It's important. Like if you want to have a natural birth, you don't want to go and book in with a private obstetrician who's got a 70% cesarean rate, and they are out there. And yes, obstetricians do then care for more high-risk women, so they do have higher rates of cesarean, and obstetricians are amazing surgeons. They are experts when it comes to complications in pregnancy. Midwives are the experts when it comes to natural physiological birth. But what's happened is midwives have been taken over by and now managed by obstetricians. So they need to work in collaboration, but what's happening is the hierarchy is doctor, midwife. They should be equal. Yeah. And so that's where there needs to be change within the system. And honestly, like we are the change. Like we are the change that our system needs to see. If we don't know what we want, if we don't speak up for what we want, if we don't prepare for what we want, then things will never change. And that's where I love hearing how you did question. And it's not a matter of like being irresponsible and pushing back. It's a help us understand, and to hear that they don't even know why sometimes they do this, because it's just become routine and normal. So people have got to understand that. You've got to be prepared for the suggestions, because they will come.
Yeah. So one of the things that kind of helped us was actually having a birth plan. So just super quickly, what is a birth plan, and what would you say are some things people should consider putting in theirs?
Right. So I actually prefer to call it a birth map.
Birth map.
Because I think if we put one expectation on one experience and we don't prepare for anything else and it doesn't go to plan, then that's where we can come out feeling like we failed or feeling traumatized because we've not understood the other journeys. So in what I teach in the education, I like to provide my clients with a sample of a map. And throughout the course, I go through every single journey. So the main 3 journeys are, well, natural, physiological birth, induction of labour, so understanding the process of induction, the steps and options, and then you've got caesarean birth. But ultimately also we talk about, well, what is the main goal? How do you want to feel? What does it look like? What does it feel like? And most couples will come to it, well, we want a healthy baby and a healthy mum. And I need to put those 2 together because, again, culturally there's a really big projection like, well, as long as baby's healthy and alive, that's all that matters. The mother matters just as much because without the mother, the baby can't survive. So how can we prepare that we all come out physically healthy and mentally well? Because you can have a birth that ends up in a caesarean and a woman goes into full trauma into that, or you can have a couple that goes into caesarean from wanting to have a natural birth and come out of it and go, it wasn't our original journey that we were hoping for. However, we know every step of the way. We were at cause. We made the right decisions. We did everything that we physically could. So now mentally we're choosing to be, right, that was our journey and we have our baby and our baby's healthy and well, although maybe you might be sleep deprived now.
It's fucking wild. You need a post-birth course.
I know. Well, there are those. My main focus is on birth and now training practitioners to do what I do, which is way more than hypnobirthing.
No, everything you do is so good. So so that's why I wanted to bring you on here. So because I had no idea that you even exist or what it is you guys do even exist until a month or 2 before the baby. Someone's like, "Have you ever thought of this?" I said, "What the fuck is that?"
I know.
And we were nearly not going to do it too because we're like, "Oh, you mean like we got a plan? We're in the hospital and holy shit, it's literally just like A to Z really understanding pregnancy, what's happening, what's going to happen, your choices, your plan." And after it was great. So I think people are probably crazy not to try and get educated. Because it is one of the most hectic experiences I've ever gone through.
It's full on, and I'm not going to lie.
Simone's ever gone through, right? It's it's not a
well, transformation is not easy, right? You both went through a massive transformation of birthing yourselves as parents as well as birthing a baby. So it absolutely is a journey.
Looking back on it now, right? For what Simona went through, what her body did, and you see this baby come out and everything, it's like you created that, and it's just so insane. And to look back on it now and think that people wouldn't want to get educated, it's one of the biggest things you'll ever do.
Yeah.
So it's pretty important to understand. So look, I'm super glad you're here. I hope a lot of people got a lot of value from that. So where can everyone find you and even check out everything you do? Yeah,
thank you. And I just want to thank you and Simona for inviting me on your journey. It was such an honor to just hold that space for you. So my company is Belly to Birth. I teach childbirth education classes on the Gold Coast. I have online courses. I also have a very big passion and focus on helping couples or women move through birth trauma or previous birth trauma. So I have coaching programs for birth trauma as well. And they can find me at bellytobirth.com.au or on Instagram, my handle's at bellytobirth, and it's the number 2. So it's belly, the number 2, birth.
Amazing.
Yeah.
All right. So to wrap this up, final question for you
is
if you were to go back to your 18-year-old self and give her 30 seconds of advice, what would it be?
Oh, gosh. Do you know what? Just trust that everything will always work out, and everything has. I would not change anything in my life. Every step has been super meaningful in my life, and I can see that obstacles, actually that's probably what I would tell her, obstacles are sometimes detours in the right direction. And that's definitely been my experience.